Hello and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea of Andrea Renee Knits, and this is a little weekly podcast where I do my best to answer some of your questions. I'm just going to open up the questions I picked out earlier here. Today I am wearing my traveler cowl. We have had some kind of stinky weather lately. I try to enjoy all the weathers. I can get down with a cozy rainy day, but we had a big storm over the weekend and now it's just been that kind of glum, dirty snow, kind of melting but still slushy. Just kind of ugh. So I am in my homemade sweatsuit. I'm not even going to bother standing up right now, but I've got my self-made sweatpants and sweatshirt and a cozy cowl and a cup of coffee that my sweet husband made me before I got started because it's one of those days. I am actually deep into design work today, and I have been for the past week, and it's the kind of design work that hurts your brain where I've done a lot of swatches, I've drawn a lot of charts, just trying to get what's in my head to work out the way I want it to. And there's always like compromises and sacrifices that have to be made in that part of the design process where you might have this image in your head, but then there's not a way to bring it to fruition that would be enjoyable to replicate for anybody else. And so you have to keep wiggling things around, and it's probably one of the most uncomfortable parts of the design process for me, because sometimes it can feel discouraging or like, will I ever figure this out? Is this gonna work? And then sometimes it turns into a mad dash to the finish line to knit the thing, get it bound off so that I can see like, okay, did this fully work the way I want it to? And so cozy clothes and hot beverages is what this afternoon calls for. So let's jump into some questions. Again, I'm wearing my traveler cowl. This one's knit up in a 3-ply combo spin. No, it's not a combo. This is not a combo. This is one colorway. It's just a 3-ply. From Hello Yarn. This was a one-of-a-kind colorway, and I love it. It is just, I just love those colors. All right, let's get into some questions, and stay tuned to the end because April 1st is coming in a matter of hours, really. And we have our next 100-day challenges to chat about and to begin. So stick around for that. All right, but let's do questions first. So question number 1, let's make sure I have the right list of questions. I am a fairly experienced knitter, but am new to making socks. I will be traveling internationally and know that I will want something to knit on. So I figured now is the perfect time to give it a go. Absolutely great travel project. I delved into your pattern library and found the Curio Socks, which I purchased the pattern for. I'm however curious about sizing. I typically wear a size US 6.5 shoe, but my foot circumference is around 9 inches. What do you recommend to end up with the best fit? Should I knit the women's large, as that is the closest in circumference, and just plan to shorten the length from toe to heel? Or should I go based off my shoe size and plan to knit the small? Or maybe I should split the difference and go medium. Okay, so such a great question about sock fit. Quick sip. So you definitely want to go with your foot circumference because the length of the sock is completely adaptable to your foot size, but the circumference of the sock is what you need to follow the directions in the pattern. And it'll even tell you in the pattern there. I always give that guideline that shows it's more for like gift knitting. If you can't measure somebody's foot, it's a good place to kick off. And again, that's more about foot length to give you a guide there, but yeah, since you can measure your own foot, you definitely would want to go, I like to have a little bit of negative ease in my socks. So you can go anywhere from like 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches, depending on stitch pattern and how stretchy you like your socks. One thing that's important is the reason we like some negative ease in our socks is because you don't want them shifting around your foot a lot while in your shoe, because that's how you get holes faster. So if there's a lot of movement going on in your shoe, that causes more friction and you'll get a hole quicker. So we want a little bit of negative ease. Let me see if I can pull up those socks. Just so I don't remember what foot circumference sizes I offer that in. So let me bring that up. But you'll notice that when you're following the pattern, it'll give you like an estimate of how far to knit. But that would be only, again, if you were gift knitting. Since you are knitting these for yourself, it'll tell you to knit like this amount of length less than your foot length, so that you still have like room for the toe and heel. So that's in the pattern for your specific foot length. All right, I'm just bringing it up right now so we can look, so I can give you an even better option for sizing. Okay, so here are the sizes. That one comes in 11 sizes, and for foot circumference, so I would say the women's large. I think that would give you a 1/2 inch of negative ease, and the recommended negative ease for this is 0 to 1. So absolutely, I would do the women's large, and then once you are following the pattern, you are going to see that it helps you figure out how long you're going to knit the foot. These are an afterthought heel sock, so you're actually going to put the heel where you would do the heel. You put that on waste yarn, you knit the foot and then the toe, and then you go back, take out your waste yarn and knit your heel. One cool thing that you can do, you don't actually have to wait to the end to knit your heel. So let's say you really want to make sure you're getting that right foot length and you're new to sock knitting, so you want to be able to try it on. Sometimes what I'll do is I will go ahead and pluck out that waste yarn after I'm like 1 inch or 2 into the foot of the sock, and I will put those live stitches right onto a spare needle, and that way I can go ahead and try the sock on, and it just pops open and your heel will stick out, and that's where you're going to knit your heel. But in the meantime, it gives you a more accurate measurement. So that's kind of a helpful way to go ahead and check the fit of your sock. But yeah, I hope that all made sense. Go by your foot circumference because the length of the foot is adjustable. Okay. Next question. Oh, I'm losing an earbud. Oh! Presents. Okay. All right. Hopefully these are connected. My next knit is going to be your LYS, which is my little yellow sweater. And I'm super excited about it, but dun, 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 I don't love bobbles. Oh, the horror. At all. If I'd like to omit them, what do I replace with it to not lose proper stitch count? As much as I would love to be able to talk you into loving a bobble, I get it. I actually just had a chat with one of my friends all about bobbles and their disdain for the bobble. It's really one of those polarizing stitches where people either really love bobbles and kind of want to put them on everything, or they hate bobbles. I love a bobble, but I get it. I respect your decision to go sans bobble. So yeah, it is just one stitch. So you just don't do anything there. Just leave it. Just knit that stitch or purl that stitch, depending if you're on the right or wrong side, and you don't have to do anything else. All right, next question. Several months ago, you showed, lost my place. You had made, let's try this again. Take 3. Several months ago, you showed a Harlo hat you had made using mohair and dyed in the wool. I loved it, so I bought some yarn to knit it up, but then I thought, oh, Should I hold the mohair double? Should I hold the mohair with the sport weight yarn and not do 2-color brioche? Can you explain how you created that beautiful hat? Did you use the fingering or worsted pattern? So that hat is right here, and it was actually my hand spun and Surrey alpaca are the 2 yarns I went with. Oh, look, I still have not trimmed. I did weave in my end, but I didn't trim it out. But so this is it. Now my naughty little ends hanging out for everyone to see. My little secret. All right, so here's the finished hat. So I actually knit this all the way to the crown shaping the first time, doing 2-color brioche, using my hand spun for 1 color and then the Kumo for the other color. I got all the way to the crown shaping and realized I would like it better if I held them together. So I actually ripped it out and started over and held them together. Holding these together, so I have noticed that Surrey alpaca tends to bloom post blocking more than mohair. It really fluffs up. So I would say that this is now, like, my 2 strands held together are pretty much the equivalent of a DK or worsted weight yarn. Post blocking, they really bloomed. But for you, you are using mohair and dyed in the wool. So dyed in the wool is a sport weight. Dyed in the wool is one of the yarns I used for my original Harlo. So the original one that I made, I used Spin Cycle yarns, and then I used Brooklyn Tweed Loft. And that was what I did for the original, like, fingering / sport weight Harlo hat. So I do think you could do a 2-color version of that using what you have. It is going to depend on your mohair. You might be able to get away with using a single strand because you're going to balance out that gauge with your dyed in the wool. Yeah, I think you can. You could double it and it would just be like kind of maxed out more. You could always swatch and see what you prefer. Like, do half your swatch with a single strand of mohair and half your swatch with a double, and see if you like one look better than the other. I think you could get away with doing it either way. I think if you held your dyed in the wool with your mohair, I still think you could get away with the original Harlo, unless you did hold it with 2 strands. And then I would maybe do the worsted. I think I would do some swatching though, so that you can really decide, because otherwise you might be like me and you're gonna get to that crown shaping and you might change your mind. So you do have a lot of options there, because here's the thing with brioche, and one of the reasons why the Harlo hat is one of my default go-to knits, it's so flexible in sizing. Like, this hat can fit, I have a fairly small head, my husband does not, and this hat could fit both of us because it's so elastic and stretchy. So I feel like with this yarn combo, I know that maybe you really want like a solid, this is what you should do answer, but I think you have options. I think you can play around with how many strands. I think you can play around with holding it together or not holding it together. And you can kind of push either pattern with what you've got. So it probably depends on how much yarn you have. If you just have 1 skein of dyed in the wool and 1 of mohair, I still think you could probably do either. I would do some swatching, because it also is going to be a little dependent on how you knit. So a great rule of thumb is that pretty much everyone knits their brioche looser than they would like stockinette, and that's just because of the structure of the fabric that we're creating with all those yarn overs and slip stitches. It's just a looser fabric. So in general, like, you'll see the original Harlo hat, I think I knit it on 2s and 3s, I think. I'm pretty sure. And that's because we want it to have the oomph. We want it to be able to protect us from the wind and things like that. So we don't want a super open fabric on our hats. So I feel like if you did a swatch, and you can swatch something, take your measurements, take a picture, unravel it, swatch it a different way. Like, you can reuse that little bit of yarn. I don't think you have to lose it. But unless you have a vision in your head, if you were like, oh, I love the idea of, because here's what's going to happen. If you hold the mohair double with that dyed in the wool, it is going to, see how you can see some color transitions in here, but they're so muted. You can't see them as clearly as you can here in my cowl. And that is because I held it with that solid Kumo, with that solid Sori alpaca. So if you like muting that color transitions down, then hold them together. If you don't want to lose that, if you're like, no, I love that aspect of it, I don't want to lose that, then I would stick with 2-color brioche using your lace weight as 1. And in that case, I think I would do the original Harlo hat. And I think that you could get away doing the original Harlo hat whether or not you held your mohair double. That makes sense? Good luck. Let us know what you do. I had somebody the other day say, does anyone ever come back and say what they did? And I'm like, oh, I would love them to. We want to hear. Tell us your updates. All right. Sip of coffee, and then we'll go on to question number 4. I was totally inspired last week hearing how many books you have read in 2024. I'm curious if you could share your approach to reading, I assume audiobooks, and how you balance that with any TV or movie watching you do. I currently watch TV when I knit, which I love, but now I'm inspired to think about reading more. Thank you. Yes, so I did used to turn to Netflix a lot for knitting. I find in general, it's kind of funny, watching something is actually a way to speed up your knitting because you stop hyper-focusing on what you're doing. And a lot of times it helps people start to knit a little faster. So I did used to watch movies and shows and things like that while I knit. And then over the past few years, I have really gotten into, it started with podcasts. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts. Now, to be honest, I don't really listen to any podcasts. If you have any podcasts that you're like, oh no, this one's so good, you have to listen to it. I love finding a new one. But yeah, it's been a while. So I ended up switching over to audiobooks. And now that I think that there can be a learning curve with audiobooks. Sometimes what I've talked to some of my friends about is how if you're new to audiobooks, sometimes you'll realize you've stopped listening. And you're like, wait, what are they even talking about? And I have found that it's actually just like a muscle you have to train. So in the beginning, sometimes I would zone out. First of all, I think always sample the audiobook before you snag it, because there are going to be some narrators that you may or may not love. And that can make or break a book. I had gotten one book that I had read before that I loved. And so I was like, oh, I would love to read this again. I'm just going to listen to it on an audiobook. The narrator was so monotone, I couldn't do it. I was like, I cannot, this is putting me to sleep. So a good narrator is important. But what else was I going to say? Oh, but I also just think that you like learn how to listen more. And so now, I mean, I can go through an audiobook in 2 days. So yes, I primarily read via audiobook because I can do it while I work, I do it while I do dishes, I do it while I walk the dog or go on my walk and knits. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And then a lot of times what I do is books I want to read the paper version for whatever reason. Those are ones I keep on my nightstand and I read before bed, because otherwise I don't have a ton of like, I can just sit here and read time. I don't have a lot of time like that. So audiobooks were a huge game changer for me. I went from reading like a handful of books a year to almost 100 a year because I can listen to them and multitask. So yes, audiobooks. And I don't really watch TV. I'm not a big TV person. I'll go through spells where I don't watch TV at all. And then every once in a while, my husband and I will find a show we like to watch together. Like every year I watch Great British Bake Off when the new season comes out. We like to watch it with our kids. We actually were watching Lego Masters, which is a really fun one to watch with kids. It's really funny and the creativity is so interesting. But then it's like an episode a day. Or episode every couple of days. So I don't do a ton of shows, unless there's like a really good one that comes out. And as far as movies, kind of the same thing. I don't watch a ton of movies. I do love when a new one comes out. But I tend to just really, really love my audiobooks. Like I'll just I still sit in our family room, like with my husband, and I'll read or listen to my book and spin or knit. while he does his thing. So we're still hanging out together, but we're not always watching something together anymore. But yeah, I think it just depends. Like, there are so many times when I'm just so into my book that I'm more curious what's going to happen in my book than about a show that might be on. So yeah, I love audiobooks. All right. I constantly find myself wanting to dive straight down the various crafty rabbit holes you showcase on your podcast. Currently, I'm diving down the sewing rabbit hole and had a question. I don't have access to fabric stores that have sewing lessons. Therefore, I am solely learning all of the necessary garment techniques through YouTube. I'm ready to start working from patterns, but find it challenging to find beginner-friendly and appealing garment patterns. Do you have any recommendations of websites where I can find good quality and easy to follow sewing patterns? Absolutely. So I've chatted a little bit about this in the past, but I have found that in general, sticking with indie sewing patterns, independently published sewing patterns, tend to be much more thorough in the directions. At least that's been my experience. Some of the bigger pattern releasing companies, they're more bare bones. Like, for instance, my berry pants that I absolutely love, there is no way I could have sewn those pants right out the gate because the directions are very sparse. Now I have no problem, but it took me a hot minute. So I would say number one that I would recommend would be Sew Liberated. They are incredibly thorough patterns. You will learn something new with every single one you try, but I've never felt like I never felt like I was grasping at straws to figure out what I was doing. They're really, really detailed. And a lot of times they include links on techniques that might be new or scary or more challenging. And now they even offer sewing classes online. So I actually just signed up for their pants class, and you have it forever. You take it on your own time. And what's cool about this one is they actually say they have the instructor and then they're teaching a real person. So you get to watch them go through their experience, but there's forums, you can chat with other people, you can ask questions, I believe. They show you how to measure yourself. It's pretty fantastic. So I think that's like next best thing to having a local place you can go, and they have a few to choose from. I know there's the pants one. They also did one on their hinterland dress, which is a great like staple dress pattern, and it's amazing. I will also say so many tutorials online, so many. So I'm self-taught. I did go to one sewing class back in the day after I had tried making a few things. I was lucky enough to be traveling for work through Seattle, and I got to go to a sewing shop there, and I signed up for this one-on-one class that I could squeeze in for a couple hours one day. And that was really helpful. I think I took away a lot from that, but you could absolutely take just as much away from doing one of Meg's classes from Sew Liberated. There's other online resources for sure, but that one was the first one to jump into my mind where I was like, oh, this is such a good place to start. And I have any Sew Liberated pattern I've attempted, I have been able to successfully complete. And I still consider myself a novice. I've done a lot of sewing now, but again, it's self-taught. Like, I'm just kind of like, oh, hope I'm doing this right. So I'm just gonna write a note in here so that I don't forget to share it. Oh, what is the other one? Oh, Helen's Closet, I think is also a really great one. Really generous with information. So that would be another pattern. I've only done a few of her patterns, but I feel like I've had success with them. And I feel like, again, they're beginner friendly. So anyways, there's two to checking out on. To check out. I don't know. Also, Me Made May is coming. What month are we in? Yeah, we are just around the corner from April, so we only have like a month till Me Made May. There are so many things I want to sew right now, but I gotta get through this design conundrum first. Okay. I threw in a little bonus question here because it is just a quick little one. For the March to May knit along, is there a limit on the number of projects we can enter? No, there's no limit. As many as you can knit in 3 months, do it. They just have to be a shawl or a sweater. And they have to be completed within these 3 months. But yeah, knit your little heart out. I actually told my husband the other night, it was the evening our kids had just gone to bed. He was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to knit my little heart out. And I did, and it was great. Okay, so that is all the questions. 100 days. I wanted to go dun dun dun, but that sounds scary. Maybe this won't be scary. I'm a little scared. So we're going to do another 100-day challenge. I wanted to open this up because I know not everyone spins. We are still doing a spinning one, but I have an idea for some others. So main one, the kicker, the kickoff, we are going to do 100 days of long draw. So most of us start with a worsted draft. So kind of like the little pinch forward. And a lot of us have now, maybe you were new to long draw, but you tried support spindling during 100 days of spindle spinning, which if you did, then you've probably now tried long draw. So we're going to do 100 days of long draw. You can spin on whatever tool you want. It can be spindles, an e-wheel, a regular wheel, whatever you want. It just has to be long draw. It can be long draw, supported long draw. I would say any type of woolen drafting. Double draw, is that what it's called? So anyways, that's what we're going to do. We're going to kick it off April 1st and go for 100 days. I'm a little nervous. I feel pretty dang good about where I've gotten with my supported spindles and spinning supported long draw, but I want to get back to my wheel and see how I can translate what I was doing on my spindles back to my wheel. So I'm a little nervous. But that's kind of the point of this, right? That's why we did it with the spindles. At the beginning of the spindle one, I did not think I was ever going to be able to do the supported spindle. And now it's like my favorite way to spin. I mean, my poor wheels are so neglected. So 100 days of long draw, here we come. That will be the hashtag. I will also open up a forum in my Ravelry group. So by the time you're watching this, it will already be there. I need to write myself a little note so that I don't forget. 100 days of long draw. Okay, now for my knitters, because I know we are not all spinners. I know that a lot of us are like, I don't spin. I don't want to spin. It's fine. You can just knit. So I am thinking 100 days of knitting 2024 as the other one. So as we are getting into end of winter, life starts, we're gonna be spring cleaning, we're finishing up with school with kids, all that stuff. It starts to get warmer out, and sometimes our enthusiasm for our knits can wane and they start to go into their baskets and bags until we feel that lovely chill come back in the fall. So I also just wanted, the thing I also have loved about the 100 days of spindle spinning is it created this 15-minute window for me of self-care that I prioritized every single day. So that's what I kind of want to do for knitting and for knitters is I want us to have even just 15 minutes. Set a timer, drink a cup of tea, and just knit for 15 minutes. It's amazing how much that adds up to over time. So that is going to be the other one for my knitters. Putting these in so I don't forget. All right, so, and of course I tried so many different, there's been a lot of 100-day challenges for knitting. I tried lots of different hashtags, couldn't find any that were brand spanking new that still made sense. So we're just going to do 100 days of knitting 2024. Okay. I told you all that I had an idea for 3 different ones. I have not had the space in my brain to figure out this last one. So maybe you can help me and maybe it can be something that we kick off with Me Made May or something. But I would love for my own self to do one for sewing. I feel like it's not super realistic to do 15 minutes a day. Did I say that for the other 2, by the way? It's for 100 days of long draw and for the knitting, it's just 15 minutes a day. You're dedicating 15 minutes for 100 days to either of those things or both of those things if you would like to do both. So the other one that I would love to do is sewing. Sewing is one of those things that for me, life's really busy. I just can't always make time for it. but I would like to try to create that space for it. And sometimes we have to be really purposeful in creating the space for the thing that gives us joy and makes us feel really happy. So that is something I want to do with my sewing, is I want to create space for it. So I feel like 15 minutes just isn't really long enough. There is not much I do in sewing that I can do in just 15 minutes. You can break it down into bite-sized pieces. Like sometimes I'll trace the pattern one day, cut out the fabric another day, iron one, like you can break it down into tidbits. But here's the other thing is, I know a lot of us, I'm very lucky that my workspace is in our home and I had enough room in my workspace to include a little sewing area. But most people I know that sew, a lot of times they have to take over their dining room table, or it's not in a place where they can always have their sewing out. And for my sewists out there, like, it can take up a lot of space. So to try to bring everything out for 15 minutes, just to me, isn't super conducive. So that's my conundrum, is how do we make it a challenge that feels really accessible and that will enhance our everyday and give us some joy? So like one thing I thought was, okay, what if it's not an everyday, what if it's not a 100-day challenge? What if it's like 1 hour a week, 1 hour a day? 1 hour a day is a big commitment. 1 day a week for 3 months, or I don't know. What should we do? How could we break that up into something that works? So anyways, if you have any ideas, let me know, and maybe we can kick it off on like May 1st or something with Me Made May. So, and I already have ideas for more of these. I'm like, these are so fun. There's so many things I want to do, but then I get over ambitious. So I got to cool my jets, and one thing at a time. All right. So there we go. I think that's it. I've got to get back to work. I've got to figure this out, you guys. Oh, decisions. Decision fatigue is no joke either. And I'm such a tactile person. Like, I have to try it. I can't just visualize it and go, yep, well, it's gonna work. I'm like, oh, I gotta knit the whole thing, and then if it doesn't work, I gotta tear it out and try again. So the design process, at least for this girl, can be real slow. But it feels so good when you get it, when you lock it in and now it's working. So that is what I'm gonna go try and do. I hope that you have such a lovely, lovely weekend, and I hope to see you next week trying out some long draw. If you're one of my spinning friends, and if you're one of my knitting friends, I hope you make a little, carve out that little bit of time to do your knitting. And I hope to see you back here next week. Feel free to submit your question through the link below. It's in the show notes. And if you enjoy this every week, you can hit the subscribe button and you'll know right away when a new video has been posted. And I hope to see you again. Bye.